My daughter's 17, and she spent 3 full days cooking, like really cooking, for 23 guests for my mom's birthday. Then, out of nowhere, my dad sends a text. We've decided to do dinner at a restaurant instead. Just adults. I didn't blow up. Didn't yell or call anyone out. I did something else. 15 hours later, the front door started to rattle. I got that message, about 10 minutes before guests were supposed to start arriving. I was standing in the kitchen doorway, trying to hold it together over a damn beet salad. Not because of the beets, though they did look like something straight off a surgical tray. No, it was because my daughter, Emily, was flitting around the kitchen like her whole life hinged on whether Grandma liked her lavender glaze. And maybe, in Emily's mind, it did. She'd been up since 5 that morning, actually earlier. I heard the alarm go off myself. She'd already baked, chopped, frosted, stirred, burned a dish and remade it from scratch. At one point, she steam-cleaned the kitchen floor because, as she put it, it was giving health inspector energy. She'd laid out the table for 23 guests. There were handwritten name cards, fresh flowers and little vases. She even printed out menus. The entire room smelled like thyme, melted butter, and something sweet I couldn't quite place. It smelled fancy. Rich. Emily had curled her hair that morning. Her apron was spotless. She had that look on her face, tired, hyped on adrenaline. The kind you see on finalists in cooking shows or brides who are starting to second-guess things. And that's when my phone buzzed. It was a message in the family group chat. The one we usually use for Happy Easter texts or blurry shots of someone's sad casserole. The message was from my dad. We've decided to celebrate at a restaurant. Adults only. No punctuation. No explanation. Just that. At first, I honestly thought I misread it. Or that maybe it was one of his dry jokes. Meanwhile, Emily had just taken a tray of sugar-free pear tarts out of the oven, special for Grandma's diabetic neighbor. She was humming. I stepped into a hallway, pretending to answer a call. I wasn't. I just needed to stop my hands from trembling. I stared at the message again. We've decided. Not. So I called my dad. He picked up after 2 rings, sounding downright chipper. You see the message? I asked, trying to sound calm. My voice was steady, mostly because my body had slipped into some kind of emotional autopilot. You're not coming? Oh no, we just changed plans, he said. It was easier this way. We're already here. You're at the restaurant now? Yep, he said. Just sat down. Menu looks amazing. Everyone's here. A pause. Why? Because Emily's been cooking for 3 days, I said, trying to keep it together. You said we'd host it here. She made enough for 23 people. She's been up since 5. Silence. Then he said, well, tell her not to take it personally. She can freeze the leftovers, right? Gotta go, waiter's here. He hung up before I could say anything else. I just stood there, staring at my phone. Then I dialed my mom. She answered like everything was perfectly normal. Hello? She said, cheerful as ever. Did you seriously just not show up? I asked. She sighed. Honey, don't start. We just figured this would be easier. Honestly, we didn't want anyone to get sick. Sick? Mom, she's 17. She's not some toddler playing house. She's taken actual classes. She built a menu. Sanitized everything. She even made diabetic-friendly dishes. That's sweet, she cut in. But it's not real cooking. Not like a restaurant. I hung up. I didn't trust myself not to yell. Next I called my sister, not because I expected her to do better, but because maybe, just maybe, she hadn't been in on it. She was. Oh, Sarah, she said, all condescending. Don't guilt-trip everyone. She's crying? She's dramatic. She's tired. She's 17. She made food for 23 people. Yeah, and none of us wanted to be her test subjects. The way she said, test subjects, made my jaw lock. Like Emily was some lab rat scurrying through a Pinterest-themed maze. I hung up on her mid-sentence. Didn't care what she was going to say next. I just stood there, trying to remember how to breathe. Emily was still chattering in the background. Do you think the pomegranate glaze is too sweet? I didn't want to overdo it. Also, is the lighting too warm? I wanted it to feel like a restaurant, but not, fake fancy. And Mom. She stopped talking. I turned around. I guess my face said everything. Her eyes dropped to my phone. Then she reached out and took it from me before I could react. She opened the group chat with one swipe. Her eyes scanned the thread. Then she saw the photo. A long restaurant table, full of people. Glasses raised. My sister's teenagers, who are barely legal adults, smiling for the camera with their plates already full. My mom grinning. My dad toasting with a glass of wine. Emily stared at the screen for what felt like forever. Then she hit the call button. "Grandma?" she said when someone picked up. I couldn't hear what the other side said, but I watched Emily nod. Then stop nodding. Her whole face sort of folded inward, like someone had stepped on her chest. But she didn't scream. She didn't even sob. She just stood there and let the tears fall. Quietly. Like she didn't want anyone to see. Like she was ashamed of even crying over it. I tried to reach for her, but she stepped back. She set the phone down as gently as you'd put down a piece of crystal. Then she turned toward the cake. It was beautiful. 3 layers. Rosettes piped all around the edges. "Happy 67th, Grandma," written in dark chocolate across the top. She stared at it. Didn't say a word. And I just stood there, feeling completely useless. But then something shifted in me. Nope. Not this time. I didn't know what I was going to do, not exactly. But I knew I wasn't going to let them take this moment from her. They didn't get to erase her effort, or decide how the story ended. Not this time. I used to think the worst pain in the world was watching your kid cry. Turns out, it's seeing them try not to, just because they don't want to upset you. That night, while the rest of them were toasting at a fancy restaurant, I stood outside Emily's bedroom door, holding a plate of untouched roast duck, wondering how the hell we ended up here. Of course, if I'm being honest, I already knew the answer. This didn't start tonight. It started when I was born. And no, I'm not being dramatic. I was the second daughter. 2 years younger. Not planned. My mom never came right out and called me a mistake. She didn't need to. She'd say things like, "We thought we were done after your sister." Or, "You were a surprise, but a sweet one." So basically, in plain old English, what it all boiled down to was this: they hadn't planned on having another kid, but here I was, and they just sort of dealt with it. My sister? She was the dream child, graceful, charming, blonde, the whole package. She could twirl once on her toes and people would clap like she'd cured a disease. Meanwhile, I could dismantle a busted fan and rebuild it so it worked better than new, but all that ever earned me was a scolding about how I shouldn't be messing with guy stuff. She took ballet. I took apart a toaster one time and got grounded for destroying household appliances. They happily shelled out cash for every single one of her dance lessons. Every recital, every glittery, sequined fever dream she dreamed up, they funded it all. But when I asked if I could take a weekend class in handwork, leatherworking, I think it was, they said, "We can't afford that." Followed by, "What would you even do with it?" Well, I'll tell you what I did. I turned it into a business. Now, years later, I run a modest but thriving little company that makes handmade home goods. My husband works with wood, and together we earn an honest living. Nothing flashy. Just real good work. But to my parents, it's still just a cute little side hustle. Meanwhile, my sister has 2 degrees, one in literature and one in dance, and about as much career stability as a paper kite in a hurricane. She's still lovely, still adored. And because the universe clearly has a twisted sense of humor, I still help her out with money now and then. Quietly. Without saying a word. That's just who I am. I foot the bill for the things no one notices. Birthday parties. Plane tickets. The random plumbing crisis at my parents' place. All of it, handled by the unofficial bank of, well, Sarah's doing okay. They treat my income like a public resource and my opinions like junk mail. And then came Emily. My daughter. My everything. My sweet, perfect karmic comeback. She's a lot like me, just louder, braver, Her interests are specific, sure, but she owns them with zero shame. Her hands are always either dusted with flour or covered in some sauce she's experimenting with. One time, she actually cried because her hollandaise didn't have enough emotional complexity. I don't even know what that means, but honestly, I adore her for it. Emily doesn't just love cooking, she wants to be a chef. Not like enjoys cooking on weekends. She's serious. She reads restaurant reviews the way most kids scroll through TikToks. She talks about mise en place like it's a sacred belief system. She's already picking out culinary schools and debating whether she wants to specialize in pastries or savory dishes. She's 17. And just like they did to me, the family keeps trying to douse her fire. Oh, it's cute that she likes to play around in the kitchen. They say she'll grow out of it. Or she's too sensitive to survive in that line of work. Maybe she should go for something more academic? Like her aunt. Right, because what we all need is more student debt and zero job prospects. I've watched Emily bite her tongue so many times I've lost count. One time, after a brunch with the family, she disappeared into the bathroom for 20 minutes. Later, I found her wiping her eyes and blaming it on onions she chopped 6 hours earlier. So when she came to me and said, "Mom, I want to cook for Grandma's birthday this year." Everything. Just me. I was surprised, but also ridiculously proud. She knew it would be tough. Knew they could be cruel. And still, she wanted to do it. I asked her 3 times, "Are you sure?" And each time, she nodded harder than before. I want to show them what I can do. And boy, did she. She planned a full menu. Printed it out. Ran the kitchen like a general, everything in order, nothing missed. She factored in every allergy, every special request. My dad won't eat mushrooms. My mom says cilantro tastes like soap. Emily made sure either showed up on a plate. She went shopping with her own money. Found quality ingredients. Did trial runs. She even borrowed a cake turntable from a friend so she could master smooth frosting lines. Every night she'd come to me with her checklist, each item marked off, and ask, "Do you think they'll like it?" I said yes every single time. But deep down, I hated that she even felt the need to ask. On the day of the party, she was up by 5 a.m., no joke. I heard the pans clinking, the quiet classical music she says helps her focus, and the click of her heels as she moved gracefully between oven and counter. By 4 p.m., she looked completely worn out, but there was this light in her, like she was finally doing something that made her soul sing. You probably know what's coming next. They didn't show. Instead, they went to a restaurant. All of them. My parents. My sister. The niece and nephew. Even the ones who usually roll in late with dip from the store showed up. The only 2 people missing? Me and my daughter, who had made a 3-tier cake and piped "Happy 67th" in delicate curls of dark chocolate. They didn't just pass on the food. They dismissed her effort. And they didn't even have the decency to come up with an excuse. But here's the part one haven't told anyone yet. Later that night, while Emily sat in her room pretending to scroll through her phone, I got a text alert. It was a payment notification. My business card, the one I sometimes use to help cover family expenses, had just been charged $1,327.90. At a restaurant downtown. Yep. The same one they went to. The number of guests matched exactly. They used my card to pay for the dinner they chose instead of Emily's. I stood there in the kitchen, still holding one of her tart crusts in my hand, just staring at the charge. At first I laughed. Because the other option was throwing a plate. Then it hit me, this deep, quiet fury. The kind that settles right before a storm rolls in. They didn't just ignore her. They erased her. And they used my money to do it. And they thought we'd just swallow it and move on. They were wrong. I probably should have been the composed one. The level-headed mom with the soothing voice saying, "It's okay, sweetie. You did your best." But I wasn't in that kind of mood. Emily was still in the kitchen, staring at the cake like it had betrayed her. Her fists were tight at her sides, like she wanted to smash something but couldn't bring herself to ruin her own masterpiece. And honestly, I got it. That cake was a damn work of art. She'd piped intricate chocolate lace around the base and topped it with candied edible violets. It looked like it belonged behind glass in some fancy patisserie. She turned to me, eyes red, and whispered, "We should just throw it all away." I looked at her. "No. Mom. No. If they won't eat it, someone else will." "Like who?" she asked. I didn't have the answer yet. But my hands were already moving. I grabbed my phone and started scrolling. Emily didn't know it yet, but I was about to set the entire night on fire. First, I called my husband. He was still at work, which somehow made me even angrier. "I need you home," I said. He didn't ask why. Just said, "Be there in 20. Then I started reaching out to everyone else, old friends, neighbors, whoever I could think of. My cousin Mark on my dad's side, who usually got left out because he was too political. Which really just meant he called out our parents when they were being awful. Folks from our local community group. Even a woman I'd met just twice at some charity bake sale. My dentist's receptionist, too. Didn't care who it was, I told them straight up what was going on. My daughter had spent 3 whole days cooking for her grandmother's birthday, but they bailed on her. She made 23 meals. I needed people who could eat. This wasn't some casual invite, it was more like a call to arms. And to my surprise, people showed up. Fast. By the time my husband pulled in the driveway, 2 cars were already parked. One neighbor brought a bottle of wine and showed up with their entire extended family, who luckily didn't have any other dinner plans. A woman I'd barely remembered from a book club 2 years ago arrived with her teenage son and a bouquet of tulips she'd picked up on the way. Words spread quicker than I ever imagined. It was like watching a protest come together, one dish at a time. Emily was shocked at first, standing in the hallway whispering, "Oh my God, Mom, what are you doing?" I told her, "I'm just saving what's left of your dignity, and dessert. Help me find more chairs," I said, turning to her. "But you cooked for 3 days. You made something beautiful. This isn't about pity. It's about defiance." That shut her up. But only because her brain was clearly still processing it all. We pushed together 2 folding tables and started laying out the food. By the time the third group of guests showed up, Emily had slipped into the kitchen, quietly reheating things and nervously whispering about sauce temperatures. Then, the journalist arrived. I hadn't invited her, someone else did. She was a friend of a friend in food media, carrying a small camera bag and a huge appetite for drama. "I heard what happened," she said. "Mind if I try a few things?" I glanced at Emily, who was frozen by the oven, eyes wide like someone just asked her to sing live on TV while holding a souffle. I said yes for her and handed the journalist the plate. But she didn't just taste the food. She snapped photos, asked about ingredients, took notes. At one point, she leaned in and whispered to me, "You know she's better than some of the professional chefs I've reviewed, right?" I swallowed hard and said, "Tell her that." Eventually, the room settled. All 23 seats were taken. Emily peeked out from the kitchen like a nervous raccoon and asked, "Should I serve the appetizer?" I said no. "You should serve your menu." And she did. The room fell quiet as the first course was served. Then came the whispers. "Wow, is that lavender? This is amazing." By the main course, there was applause. By dessert, someone stood up to make a toast. To Emily. To the girl who cooked an entire feast, who didn't quit when she was kicked down, and whose food tasted better than anyone we'd ever paid to feed us. She got a standing ovation. And then, just when it seemed perfect, a second cake showed up, not hers. Someone brought a store-bought backup. But everyone insisted Emily cut her own cake. She did. She smiled. It was barely noticeable, but it was real. And I allowed myself to finally breathe. But the night wasn't over. At 2 a.m., I was still awake when a text came through, a link. From the journalist. A full article was already live. The birthday that never was. How a teenage chef cooked for 23, got abandoned, and ended up hosting the most unforgettable dinner of the year. The article didn't just praise Emily's food, it told the whole story. How her grandmother's birthday was supposed to be at our house. How Emily did all the cooking herself. How the family decided, without telling us, to go out to a restaurant instead, and even used my card to pay for it. They didn't name my parents, but they did name Emily, and made sure everyone knew exactly who stayed and who left her behind. I stared at the screen, stunned. Then I scrolled to the comments, and it had already started. She's amazing. Where can I try her food? Who abandons their own granddaughter like that? I looked over at Emily, asleep on the couch, still in her apron, hands curled like she was holding a spatula. And I knew this wasn't the end. Not by a long shot. Because that article was already making waves, and some folks wouldn't like what it stirred up. There's a special kind of silence right before someone shows up angry at your door. No footsteps. No car. No yelling. Just stillness, like the air itself is holding its breath. I was washing dishes when it happened. Half the cake was still in the fridge. I was humming quietly, letting myself feel a tiny bit of peace when… bang! 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 I dried my hands, peeked out the window, and almost laughed. They really showed up. My parents stood on the porch in matching windbreakers, both furious like they were actors in some courtroom drama. And right behind them, arms crossed like she'd practiced in the mirror, was my sister. I opened the door because I was tired of hiding. But I didn't invite them in. You need to fix this. My dad snapped, skipping the hello. My mom jumped in. Do you have any idea what you've done to our reputation? My sister said nothing yet, letting the elders speak first, very old school. I blinked. What I've done? They pushed past me before I could stop them. Into my hallway, into my kitchen, into my home, like they still thought they had any say here. You told the media we abandoned Emily. My mom hissed. I crossed my arms. I didn't tell them anything. A journalist came, tasted the food she made, heard the story, and wrote about it. Honestly, I think they went easy on you. My dad jabbed a finger at me. You think this is funny? Everyone at church read it. The neighbors too. My golf buddies won't even answer my texts. I raised an eyebrow. That's devastating. Then my sister stepped forward. You need to tell them it's not true, she said, her voice shaking with fake calm. Say it was exaggerated. That it was taken out of context. I stared at her. Taken out of context. Did someone else hijack your thumbs and send that text from the restaurant? Did I just imagine the $1,300 charge on my card? Did Emily dream up those photos you all posted from the dinner? My mom's voice cracked as she spoke. They made us look like monsters. Quietly I said no. You did that to yourselves. She just cooked. That's when things got louder. They weren't even talking to me anymore, they were shouting at me. Around me. Through me. She's just a kid, and she's already learned to use the internet as a weapon. She embarrassed her grandmother just to get attention. You raised her wrong. She's dramatic. Ungrateful. Then, the one that stung like a slap, my mom turned and looked right at Emily, who had quietly stepped into the hallway behind me, and said, You should be ashamed of yourself. I don't even remember moving. 1 second, I was standing in the doorway. The next, I was planted firmly between them and my daughter. That's when my husband walked in. He didn't ask what was going on. He just saw their faces, saw Emily's tears, and stepped in like a bouncer. Out, he said. My dad laughed. This is a family matter. No, my husband replied. This is my home. You came here to yell at a 17-year-old girl who made you dinner. You don't get to hurt her twice. Not today. Not ever. He didn't raise his voice, didn't need to. They stood there for a beat, angry and rattled, deflating. Then my sister muttered something about legal action and stormed out. My parents followed. Slam. Silence. Emily was still right behind me. Quiet. Frozen. I moved to hug her, but she turned toward the living room window. Phones were pointed at our house. 3 of them. I leaned closer and saw who it was, Ryan, our neighbor from across the street, standing on his lawn with a stunned look. The same Ryan who runs the local Facebook group and live-streamed our last neighborhood barbecue. Of course. I gave him a look that said, Hello? And if you post this, I will set your compost bin on fire. Too late. That night, a video showed up online. Titled, The grandparents from that viral teen chef story just showed up at her house and screamed at her. Watch what they said. The internet did what it does best. It lit a fire. The comments were savage. Imagine being this bitter over a cake. They sound like they're auditioning to be villains in a Hallmark movie. Who yells at a kid who cooked them dinner? One comment said it plainly. This is why some of us cut off our families. That night, before I blocked my parents, I saw the last round of texts. First, you've ruined us. Then, we'll take legal action if you don't issue a correction. Then, this is elder abuse. Right. I didn't respond. I blocked them all. My parents. My sister. Their whole side of the group chat. And I deleted the card they'd used to pay for that dinner. That kind of financial betrayal? Not happening again. Later, I posted something simple. Not a rant. No call-out. Just one sentence. We stand by every word. And we're done protecting people who hurt our daughter. I braced for backlash. But instead I got support. Old friends reached out. Strangers messaged Emily. A local chef invited her to stage in his kitchen over the summer. Someone from a culinary program she dreamed about said they'd be following her journey closely. We didn't celebrate. But we finally let out a breath. Fast forward a year. Emily got in. Not just anywhere, the program she used to whisper about, the one she thought was impossible. She's still in her first year, but she already has clients. People who want her to cook for events, bake for birthdays, cater small dinners. Some even mention the article. Her food blog is blowing up. She posts recipes, photos, videos. She's got real followers. People who see her. She's changed. Not louder. Not more aggressive. Just steadier. She never reached out to my parents again. Neither did I. We heard they moved. Some town 2 hours away. Too many people stopped inviting them to things. Too many friends suddenly had plans. They told someone they wanted a quieter life. Sure, Emily never got a real apology. And I never got my money back for that restaurant dinner. But we got something better. Clarity. Peace. Emily's building a future with her own 2 hands. And nobody can take that away. So yeah? That's how my daughter's first heartbreak became her first headline. How a ruined birthday turned into a full-course rebirth. And how I stopped funding people who thought they could buy silence with guilt. I chose my daughter. And I'd do it all again tomorrow. But tell me, did I go too far? Or just far enough? Let me know in the comments. And if you want more stories like this, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell.